Well, good morning. It's great to see you today. Welcome back. If this is your first time back in a long time or in the last number of months, it's really wonderful to see you. I had to stop singing this morning just to be quiet and listen to the voices around me. You know, we had a lot of really quiet Sunday mornings in this room with nobody here, and just singing to ourselves, preaching to a camera, and so it's so great to see. We had a 9 a.m. service this morning, and it was great to see people out for that as well, and so welcome back. Just a couple reminders as we welcome back. Again, masks are optional. This section here is specifically for people who want to have physical distancing, and so just as a reminder, as you come on in, we want to help you be comfortable. If you have any questions, certainly don't hesitate to reach out and ask us. And I want to remind you, we're going to have a party on September 26th. So September 26th at 6:30 p.m., we're going to have our induction service for Pastor Sandy. I think this is our 7th or 8th attempt at planning this event, and we are determined. We are having an induction service. So if we have to do it outdoors in the snow on September 26th, we will do it. So we're looking forward to it. This is our chance as a church family to set Sandy aside for this ministry, to pray for her, to accept her as a pastor and a leader in our life, and to say we will do whatever she asks us to do. Does that sound fair? All right, good. So we're going to have a great night, so be thinking about that. I wanted to let you know, in June, the deacons and the pastoral staff took a day and set aside some time just to be praying and wrestling with what's this next season? What are the things we need to be thinking about, praying about, and talking about? And we kind of sense the Lord laying three themes on our hearts. And so I just want to remind you about what they are, because they're going to shape this teaching series called Honest to God in the month of September. The first is spiritual renewal. That we just recognize that in this last year and a half, most of us have experienced our faith being stretched, challenged, frayed maybe around the edges. And that as we look into this brand new season, we want to lay a foundation of prayer. That's why we're having these prayer events once a month. And the opportunity is just to gather together and say, Lord, this is a new season. And we're going to build this foundation on you. And we're going to ask that you breathe some new life into us, because we're tired and we're weary. And so we're going to be talking about this as we continue to go through this fall. The other one is healing. And they're thinking specifically here around mental health, and just how is it that we can have an honest conversation about how we're doing with our mental health. I know mine has taken a beating in this last year and a half. Maybe yours has too. We're going to have these check-ins once a month, the last Wednesday of every month. You can come here to the church. We're going to have a conversation about a specific topic. This month, we're going to talk specifically about the question, why am I so angry? I spoke to a Christian counselor and I said, what's kind of the thing that people are asking for help with the most? And she said, easy, anger. So she's going to come, she's going to deliver a teaching. We're going to then have an opportunity to ask some questions with her, and then we'll break into groups if you want to stick around for that part to go a little bit deeper. So we're going to do this once a month, just a check-in to say, all right, how are you doing? What are some things that we need to be talking about together as people of faith so that we can continue to stay well? The third is reconnecting. Getting people connected again. You may remember from high school physics or something, the topic of inertia. You have an object, it's moving and it stops, and it's hard to get moving again once it's stopped. It gets stuck. And I know for me, maybe for you, you know some of your friendships, connections, life groups, other family connections, things have been stuck, and you need some help getting them moving again. You know, I used to go to a gym here in the city. I loved it. The people were great. The staff were great. The programs were great. When the pandemic came, I stopped going, and I haven't been back. And someone asked me the other day, well, are you going back? I said, yeah, probably. I don't know. I love it. I like it. I still think I should probably get in better shape. I just haven't gone yet. And I need something to get me going. I need a push. I need a catalytic moment. I need probably a discounted membership offer or something just to get me back moving again. For some of you, you would say it's been true about church. It's been true about maybe groups that you're a part of, ministries that you volunteered in, you were moving and then you stopped. And you need some help getting moving again. That's why we're doing the thing we did earlier today, the ministry fair. It's why we've got the 50 plus, all these different events that we're doing. Try to get you reconnected again. Because my experience as I talk to people is they were reluctant to go. They were reluctant to get back. And then they saw some people and they say the same thing. Oh, it was so good to see people. It was so good to be back. It was so good to reconnect. And so we want to be providing opportunities for this, but it's going to require something really important from each of us. And that's honesty. If we're going to have a conversation about where we are, we're going to have to be honest. And we're going to have to be honest with the person that it's the most difficult to be honest with. Do you know who that person is? Yourself, myself, about how we are really doing. Don't you love it when someone mistakes you for your parents? Or tells you that you're getting older, boy, you've gained some weight, or they tell you at work, that project was okay, but it wasn't great. Don't you love honesty? When someone just tells you the cold truth, don't you just say, I want more of that in my life? We have to be honest. My wife and I have this joke that if one of our vehicles, we're driving it and it's making some noise because something's wrong with it, we just joke, just turn up the radio. Because if you can't hear it, then probably the problem goes away, right? Isn't that true? No, it's a horrible way to run a vehicle. It's going to cost you more money down the line. And it's true in life. If you're having challenges, if there's things going on, ignoring them does not make them better. And so we want to have honest conversations about how we're doing. And how is your faith? How is your mental health? How is your level of connectedness to you, your friends, to your church family? And today we're going to talk about our level of connection. And so I want to start by asking you a question. Does your faith have a friend? Does your faith have a friend? We just watched kids going back to school, and when I was a kid going back to school, my number one thing for the first day of school wasn't clothes, it wasn't anything like that, it was, who am I going to walk to school with? Because I'm not walking into school alone, right? I don't want to be that kid. I've got to go in with a group, or I've got to go in with some friends. In the same sense, I want that image in your mind when you think about your faith. Does my faith have a friend? Or am I walking alone through this season? Because when God created you and I, He did not create us to be self-sufficient. God created us, and He created our faith to flourish as we are in relationship and as we are connected to other people. This was His original design from the very beginning. When we were perfect, when we had no sin problems, He wanted us to be connected to other people. Genesis chapter 2, early on in the creation story, God says, it is not good for man to be alone. And this isn't just about marriage. Whether it's friendships or family, we were not created to do life by ourselves. Now, here's the challenge, especially if you, like me, grew up in North America. I want to talk to you about this, because this is not what we grew up believing. If you're like me and you grew up in North America, then you realize you were part of a cultural experience that has given the highest value in our culture, radical individualism. That as a Canadian born in Canada, the greatest and highest, one of the highest values is to be independent. I'm going to do it myself. Well, how about this? I'm going to pull myself up by my own bootstraps. I have no idea what bootstraps are, but I'm going to pull myself up by them, right? I got it. I did it all by myself. I started this by myself. I built it by myself. Nobody helped me. I did it by myself. That is the cultural stories that we celebrate, the business stories that we celebrate, right? I remember having a conversation with somebody who was born outside of North America in a more communal culture, and they were asking me about this phrase, being pulled up by your own, or pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. And so I explained it to them, and then I said, that's weird. Why would anybody celebrate that they did it all by themselves? God has not created us to be by ourselves or to do life on our own. And this is seeped into our version of Christianity. In fact, if you were born in North America, you probably grew up believing this: God created me to do it myself. And if I get stuck or I run into problems, then I will quietly and I will confidentially go and seek out some help. And that person is going to be sworn to secrecy, never to tell anybody that I had a need. They will help me, and then I'll pay them back, right? That is North American kind of cultural Christianity. I will do it by myself. And the message under that is, if I need help, there's something wrong with me. I'm weak. I'm a failure. I'm not as strong as those other people, right? I remember visiting with somebody. We have grief share starting tomorrow night. I remember someone coming to me one time and saying, I think I'm going to come to grief share. And they came to me in an attitude of failure, like, I should have been able to get through this on my own, but I can't. So I guess I'm going to have to come for some help. I thought nothing could be further from the truth. You and I, when God created us, did not create us to walk through life alone. So we've grown up in this experiment of radical individualism. Add to that now that we're growing up in the digital era, where we're spending more time on our phone and less time with real people. More time on our phone and less time with our friends. More time on our phone and less time with our family. In fact, a survey said North Americans have gone from having 3.2 friends 20 years ago to 1.8 today. I don't know what 0.8 of a friend is, but it's not as good as a whole friend. American sociologist Robert Putnam recently said 40% of Americans have 0 to 1 confidants. And the confidant is the person you call when it all falls apart and you just know you can call them and they'll be there for you. 0 to 1. In an article of The Atlantic, a doctor said, loneliness is the greatest pathology of our time, greater than cancer. Think about that for a second. Now, a side product of us spending all this time on our phones, and in particular spending our time in this world of social media, it's made us very tribal, right? It's broken us into these little tiny groups and subsections of subgroups that where we belong and where everybody is right, just like I'm right? Where they believe everything perfectly, unlike all of those other people in the world, right? You find yourself at a home where everybody has the same views on, shall I name a few issues for your listening pleasure? Let's see. Abortion, same-sex marriage, guns, Black Lives Matter, Donald Trump, global warming, masks, vaccines, and Britney Spears' dad, okay? All of the major topics in our culture today. Which camp are you in? What do you believe about that? What's your stance on this? What do you view? Oh, you don't need to tell me. I was on your Facebook page. I saw your Twitter. I saw what you liked and retweeted and posted on Instagram. I now know everything about you, right? This is the world that we live in. We're in these little tiny communal groups where we look at everybody else and think, you're wrong, you're crazy, and we become more and more convinced of our own rightness. So we get this radical individualism. We're spending all of this time on social media on our phones, and just imagine now for a second, just imagine that we were all collectively going to live through a global pandemic. Just imagine where we could not go out and where we spent more and more time at home and we spent more and more time disconnected from friends, family, church family, and consequently more time on our phones. What might happen to us then? Might being connected be a challenge? Might it be possible that we feel greatly disconnected from each other? I want us to turn this morning to a difficult story found in Genesis chapter 4. If you have your Bibles, you can follow along, or you can use the one in the front of you. It's on page 6. It's the first book of the Bible. It's shortly into the human story here. It's not a real encouraging story, but I think it's important for this conversation of being connected today. Let me just read it for you. Genesis chapter 4. I'm just going to read through to verse 9. Adam lay with Eve, his wife. She became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Immediately, we have this interconnectedness. Adam needs Eve. Eve needs Adam. The Lord is involved in all of this, making these things happen. It's a moment of connectedness. Now, Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. But Abel brought fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. So some people have wondered, what was so bad with his offering? I think most theologians think it's in that phrase, Cain brought some of his offering. He just brought some stuff. He didn't think about it. It wasn't important. It didn't have value. He just grabbed some things, whereas Abel brought the very best of the fat portions. Verse 6, then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it." Now, Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Where is your brother Abel?' 'I don't know,' he replied. And then here are the words that should make the hair stand up on your arms as we hear them. 'Am I my brother's keeper?'" This is a horrific story. We're 4 chapters in, the second generation. A brother murders a brother. But we see what's lying beneath this behavior. It's this attitude, contrary to the design of God in our lives, is I'm not responsible for him. I do me, he does he. I am not responsible for this man. God's design, his intent from the beginning is that we would be our sister's and our brother's keeper. That if someone is struggling, it's not their problem alone, but it's part of our responsibility to walk with them. It's captured so beautifully in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 and 10, which says this, "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who has no one to help them up." Friends, we live in a culture where people try to carry their burdens all by themselves. And when they fall, and they do, we all do, they have nobody to help them up. Now, let me just speak for a second to those of you who are saying, okay, you're talking about Christian community. I've tried that. In fact, when you were reading the Cain and Abel story, the only time I've ever been tempted to kill somebody was in my small group, right? And I was on this way to small group thinking I'm going to kill somebody because they're driving me crazy, right? Look, I'm not going to try to over-romanticize it. Some of you would say to me, I've been burned by Christian community. I was there, I shared something, and I heard about it later. Some of you would say, I went with a real need. I showed up hoping that someone would walk with me, and all we talked about was shallow topics and surface issues like people's favorite ice cream. And we never really got to the point of being and caring for one another. I realize that this topic is fraught with all kinds of challenges, and that the task of creating community, the task of walking with one another, is challenging work. It's gospel work, and it's the very work of discipleship. Dietrich Bonhoeffer has this wonderful line. He says, "The person who loves their dream of community will destroy community. But the person who, and listen to this, loves those around them will create community." We see this in Acts chapter 2. How many times have you had people say, I want to have biblical community like Acts chapter 2, where they're meeting in their homes day and night, praying together, and everybody shows up and cashes in their paycheck, throws it down on the table, and everybody takes what they need, and they're having meals, and isn't life great? Right? Haven't you read that passage and said, how come our life group isn't more like that? Right? Well, fast forward a few weeks. In the same group of people, you've got sexism, you've got racism, you've got power struggles, you've got some weird sexual behavior going on in the same group of believers. So if your group's kind of wonky and weird, you've got a biblical group too. You're experiencing biblical community. This is the challenge. There is no perfect community this side of heaven. Your friends will disappoint you. Your life group members will disappoint you. Your family will disappoint you, and you will disappoint you at times too. Henry Nylen has this wonderful line. He says, we need to forgive each other for not being God, for not being perfect, and for not always doing what others expect us to do. And for some of you today, maybe the reason that you are hesitant to get connected, hesitant to reach out, is because you've had expectations for everybody in your group to be perfect. And it's an unfair expectation for all of us. True community happens when we recognize our calling is to love others as God has loved us. To remember God's affection does not change when he discovered that I was not perfect. He still loves me. And my job with my friends, my family, my life group, and others is to love them even though they're not perfect, and for them, hopefully, to reciprocate. True biblical community starts when we love each other with the same kind of love that we have received from the Lord. This is gospel work. This is what discipleship is all about, learning how to do and practice this. This is why biblical community is so beautiful, because it's got this beautiful vision for us to aspire towards. It's so messy, but then God meets us in that moment with grace and his Spirit working in us to keep at it and to keep going after it. If you ask me today, Rob, what is the number one thing I think Rivercross Church should do as we think about the culture and the day that we're in, it is to figure out how to live well together with one another and to make it available to other people. Because we are living in a time where this kind of love you in spite of your imperfection community is really hard to find. We live in cancel culture. We live in if you mess up or say the wrong thing, we're done with you culture. And people need to see in the way that we treat each other, the kind of unconditional love that we have received ourselves from the Lord. That makes room for people who are struggling. That makes room for people who are trying to figure out their faith. I don't know about this book. I don't know about this stuff. That makes room for people who are hurting and says, we are going to walk with you in this season. God's vision for you and for I to flourish, to experience life at its best, is to journey with others. So let me ask you, does your faith have a friend? And let me make it more pointed, because you might say, well, I go to church and I do some things, I'm in a group. No, who is your friend? What is the name of your friend that's helping you in your faith? And if you're not sure, then today I invite you to be honest to God about that. And say, Lord, if I'm honest, I don't have a friend for my faith. If I'm honest, I've been trying to live the Christian life all by myself. If I'm honest, I'm scared. Because if I actually get a friend and they know what I'm like, they might not want to walk with me anymore. Or maybe you're saying, I have some friends, but look, this last year and a half has kind of made that friendship complicated, or we've just kind of fallen into this unhealthy rut of talking about ice cream flavors. And then we begin praying. And if that's you today, then you're going to have to do something uncomfortable. I'm sorry. You're going to have to do something and take a step. You're going to have to take a risk and reach out, send a text, make a phone call, go for a walk, make a coffee date, invite somebody out to lunch and say, look, could we meet together to pray once a week? Could we do a devotional plan together? Would you mind if we just hung out some and do something, take a step? If you're in a life group, this means, you know what, we're going to start up and I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to make it a priority, and I'm going to show up ready, not just to kind of eat and just chill out. I'm going to show up and be ready to be engaged. I'm going to listen. I'm going to be encouraging. I'm going to look to give a word to somebody, and I'm going to make sure we don't just talk about surface stuff all the time either. Let me twist it. Whose faith are you befriending of someone else's? Who are you thinking about, praying about, carrying around in your heart? Who are you cheering on, encouraging, speaking words to? Whose faith is stronger, whose decisions are wiser because of your influence in their life? So let's be honest again. Is it possible that in this last year and a half you have become disconnected and almost everything on your calendar is you? And it involves nobody else. There's no other names there. Is it possible that in a desire just to stay safe in this pandemic and just kind of protect ourselves, that we've fallen into some habits that are now normal where we don't see or call or FaceTime or even can go for a walk with anybody? Is it possible in this season there was things that you used to do before that you loved doing, you were volunteering, you were serving, you were getting together with some people, and now all those have stopped and you just need some help getting moving again? Would you be honest about that today? Say, God, this is where I'm at. And let the Lord speak to you and be thinking about it. We'd love to have conversations about how do we help you get reconnected again. Let me just close with this story. One of the retired missionaries at Canadian Baptist Ministries told us the story, and I've just loved it. And some of you, I apologize, you've heard it before. It was about a Canadian teacher who'd gone to Kenya to do some education among some of the young leaders, kind of looking to get into the business world. This Canadian was getting ready to go over there. She had prepared PowerPoint presentations. She had all of this incredible notes and materials all ready to go. She was so excited. And so she shows up there day one and she works through all of her material. They love it. They've had a great time together as these women kind of learning and growing together. The teacher gets up day two, shows up. She's all ready with her PowerPoint slides and her notes, ready to go after it again. And just she starts into her material, and one of the women students stands up and says, "Excuse me, there's 3 ladies here today who weren't here yesterday. I'm wondering if you could go back and do the material from yesterday so they can catch up on it. This teacher, obliging as a guest, said yes. Started over, redid day 1 material on day 2. She went home that night and she reorganized her notes and her PowerPoint slides and how am I going to get all this material in? Now I've got less days, and started working on packaging and getting it all ready. And the next day she goes into class and all ready with a plan and starts going through the material. And when someone stands up again and, excuse me, there's some women here today who weren't able to be here the first 2 days. And I'm wondering if you could start over for their benefit so we could kind of all be on the same page. The teacher, just at wit's end, said, we're never going to get through the material at this rate. To which the student replied, ma'am, what matters is not whether we get through the material, but that we get through it together. In this season of challenge, can we be befriending each other's faith, working with each other so that we can get through these times together, so that we're there for one another, looking out for one another. I'm going to ask the worship team to come up as we close in prayer here this morning. We're entering a new season. We're entering a new time. And for us, our hope is that this is a season where you feel just incredible freedom to be honest to God about how you're doing. And that our hope is that as you are open and honest, it'll be in this space that the Lord meets you in a new way. That you discover this is not a place for shame to live. This is not a place to be embarrassed about how the struggles you might be having. There is a freedom here to say, Lord, you know what? I need you to do something new in my life. I'm tired. I'm discouraged. I'm disconnected. I don't know where I fit anymore. Lord, I just need you to do something new. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for your unrelenting commitment to each person here today, for all those watching online. Lord, your love and your dreams and your hopes for each and every one of us. Lord, and you see how we're doing. Give us the courage today to be honest to you. And Lord, we pray that as we are honest to you, something new would give birth in our hearts, that a hope would spring up. You would catch a vision again for what it is that you're inviting us into. And we pray this in your name.